Hi there, welcome to Watcher's Report. The subject today is what we got here is pictures to go with the hypothesis now. I'm going to try to help with that. Probably better to see it, you can see it much better than my little scribbles on the board. So I'm going to try to have this here for you. So the subject today is part 2 of the hypothesis on the shift. So what I do is I actually get into some of what the research is actually conducted by NASA, and I'm bringing some of that information in. And there's a hypothesis here by Alan Buies that so I bring what he says, and I have an antithesis to something he said about climate effect. Okay, so this is what I'm learning. I'm having to learn. So the last one I learned a couple things from. After that, looked into the abstract part of my initial hypothesis, and found out what was actually things that were researched that could either support or not what I was seeing. But I actually looked up and found some pictures on it too. So then, so now I'm going through the interval hypothesis here, and so there's several intervals here. The one is the polarity shift and its relation to other things going on now and its history, and then I added on some things that are recent discoveries about prehistoric civilization and the original paradigm of establishing civilization. So then now it's coming down to that the problem, my theory here, according to this NASA research here. So the magnetic poles have reversed 183 times in the last 83 million years. And they go on about this, and hundreds of times. It's 160 million years. Okay, the time intervals between reversals have fluctuated widely, but average about 300,000 years, with the last one taking place about 780,000 years ago. I don't get it. They averaged around 300,000, but this time we missed one. Did we miss one or something? No, but what I think happened in that time, and this goes with my hypothesis on the moon, because it's related. It's related to what's going on in the intervals. It's one of the intervals of the hypothesis is. The purpose of the moon as now being observed as like an interplanetary robot. I forgot the name for those. And I was saying it's a giant, looks like a giant steel magneto ball, where that would generate with fixed magnet system. It generate the electromagnetic current to possibly feed and stabilize the whole planet's magnetic field. So I'm thinking that the moon wasn't always there. It wasn't always there, this thing. I'm starting to see now that maybe a polarity shift was just maybe a normal thing on a planet, not trying to sustain all this important life on it at the time of, like, people, mainly people, becomes more of a critical thing once you're got little babies around. And so then I think in that time, and maybe why it skipped that last 300,000 year dew point, punctuation point is maybe the moon was in by then and stabilizing it for its purpose. So then adding to that, that is in the abstract of my hypothesis, that's the purpose of the moon. And it's being affected right now. And I'm thinking what's happening with the polarity shift is because it comes down to this simple thing. That it was established with its moon to stabilize it as it has been naturally. And particularly starting off with these archangels that are looking like the ones that established life here that were written in the Book of Enoch. That they had established life here and then understood the polarity of the planet, how it functioned and stuff. And those are the ones, Anu. These are the ones putting your moon in your sky for man to be able to be there and life to be able to be sustained for his existence there. And so, but there was a fallen thing that happened, and then there was a disconnect from those who originally established life here from the rest of the universe. And this is where things, I think, fell away. And so now, a long time now, man's coming to discoveries since this was all established. And in our discoveries, what we did is we started engineering apart from being connected to the universe that originally established this whole system of understanding. And so that was in my first video about that hypothesis, is building civilizations and empowering them with certain technologies of energy that generate energy to very high levels and change the primary conductive zones possibly on the planet. And so I believe that was originally established a way to do that on the planet without affecting the polarity. And we didn't understand that. We've been building on it apart from the paradigm of how to do this, build civilization on life planets. And I think what we're doing is we're affecting it in a way where it's all coming apart at the seams. And so in some of my variables of my hypothesis, I do really have what Chan Thomas was saying about how all that polarity and that electromagnetic field and how it functions and how it really holds everything in its proper place from the center of the core of the planet all the way to the outer core and to the surface level even. And so this is, in my hypothesis, one of the variables is the volcano eruptions. That is a sign of the movement from the polarity shift, and that shifting is what's really causing the rest of the planet to come apart at the seams and adjust accordingly to the new polarity. Because the other polarity, when it's stable, holds everything in a certain place, right? From the core to the all the way to the outside. Everything's held in a certain place because it's all just kind of floating there. It's not really all fixed to each other. And so I really believe that's what's going on. So in that, this goes with my video about the stones that rain from heaven the plague of hail and how it's talking about the super volcanoes going off. And now I'm starting to see really what sets them off here. And I think it's when it gets into this polarity shift is during the adjustment. It's in this readjustment that all your liquid core is now going to come to the surface on extreme levels in this adjustment. Because where you have extreme levels, you're going to create pressure, megatons of pressures that it's going to have to ventilate. So there's going to be extreme amount of ventilation going on with volcano activity. So you can see it already increasing on the small ones, and then now the big ones are starting to. Okay, so then that's one of the variables in there. And so now, if we could see here, this is what it looks like stabilized, north, south, right? Somehow this is where it's getting now. It's getting all jumbled up. There's a confusion here. And now you're starting even to get where some of your South Pole zones and your North Pole zones are starting to switch here. You can see the switch going on here. And this is really coming apart at the core of this. And so then what I'm saying in my hypothesis that actually originally that I'm saying the moon was part of a stabilizing that was that any engineering on this life planet would have to be able to sustain this electromagnetic fields here. See what I'm saying? Even our bodies function on this polarity. Without this polarity, our all the way down to the capillaries in our blood just aren't where they're supposed to be doing what they're supposed to do. Okay? So this gets down in the whole initial intentional life, right? And so then what we're finding here, what we're seeing here, this is the variable in my hypothesis on the stabilizing this polarity is where when you seed how these pre-Fluvian civilizations, these ancient civilizations, this is not man's technology. Okay, man's been kind of, I don't know, rationalizing on what he's finding, and so now we're waking up and seeing what reality is. Man can't do any of this stuff. Okay, so then all these structures are around the planet, and they all have they're all have this mysterious levels of electromagnetic energy, almost like they're power stations or something. And ziggurats, they're all the way from these ancient old ziggurats and pyramids, different types of these ancient structures, right? And then when they started to look at them around the planet from top view, bird's eye view is showing that there's these patterns as to how these things are very particularly, you see what I mean, placed in these very particular zones here. And they're all connecting through these different lines here, going this way, this way, this way. I think this all had to do with that polarity. Putting energy on the planet and trying to function that way with powering up civilization. I think it's where we start building off of this paradigm, off of this, right? This very intricate, very precise scheme about how you're going to get energy on the planet and use it while sustaining the polarity. And so then man comes in, right? After this thing happens, and there's all these things about Enoch and what happened to these follow-ons. It looks like we got extraterrestrials been stranded on this planet, families of them that mingled with us, that have been stranded in a state of mortality here. They're not eternal, they're not immortal anymore. That's the key of the universe and existing in it and seeing all its wonders. You can't be mortal. Somehow you got to get connected to the immortal one, the source of life, who is the one that connects us all by the awareness of our spirit, our conscience. The same with the extraterrestrials. They can be loving and gentle or dark and morbid. Understand? So then something happened here, right? So their mind about things on the planet was no longer what was ruling the man. It was left for his own discoveries, and then in these discoveries started building off of this in these different zones and generating completely different and having an entirely different matrix of networking in that, where it's totally gone off the original thing, and now that it has, it's created new primary conductive zones that the old one that exceed the old original primary conductive zones. This is where I'm saying these primary conductive zones now are stationed here. And so in that, right, you've got your pole where it's pointing, right? And then every sudden you start changing that. The thing is, if you create another primary conductive zone that exceeds it, it's going to go and follow that. It's going to follow that. That's how magnetism is. And that's how they... So anyway. So that's what I'm saying is really what it's engineering on a life-sustaining planet, disconnected from the network of the universe and their mind and understanding of it, that actually creates the pole shift during man's existence on the planet. It's not the same if it's not got that vital component of just the evolution of plants and small animals. It's different. Somehow it seemed to all be prepared for that greater cause. And so, yeah, that's the hypothesis there on it. Could see, too, some of this stuff here. Man, it's amazing where these crossing points are according to the poles and the equator. And so in that, what I'm saying there, if you remember the last video, I'm saying that what is Antarctic right now and what they're seeing was a great, looks like maybe a great civilization there with the Crystal City and everything and the things there, mystery world down here. I'm saying that it was a possibility that was up here at the time, at the equator, at the time of the last polarity shift. And possibility that this once happened with the fallen ones before man's, before all this thing going on with man. There was a possibility of something that was originally happening with it, and then it happened a second time. So it could have originally happened with the fallen ones a long time ago, and then now after the. So here you go. So then in the volcano, in the volcano factor here, this interval, I wanted to give you some pictures. Last time you didn't probably see too well. But you see, this is where we have to understand what supervolcanoes are. Because I can draw my little thing on the board, but you're not going to really get it. You got to realize the most of the stuff that man has really experienced as far as the earth ventilating in these ways, it's just been this small stuff, you know? I mean, if you could see that there's volcanoes range from a mole, well, it's almost like a molehill to a giant gargantuan port hole. So then you got this little thing, you know, and let's see which this one is called. I can't kind of read it too well. Here's Mount St. Helens here. That's the second one here. If you could see Mount St. Helens. Well, we were getting ash. I remember when that went off, I was in Phoenix, Arizona. It was raining ash there. We were living right near Camelback and 27th Avenue on Mariposa. And it was raining ash there when that went off. That's pretty good ways if you want to measure how far that is. And that was from this little guy. Look. It's like a little puff of smoke. It's like hardly nothing. It's hardly nothing compared to a super volcano. Yeah, and this is how much they get up a little bit bigger. And this is where Yellowstone is here. Yellowstone it's insane. And this one over here by Indonesia, the Krakatoa. Krakatoas. Someone had a video of Krakatoa going off. I don't know. It's hard to just say what's going on these days when you see a video. Krakatoa looked like it was going off. Maybe check it out. So, all right. Oh yeah. Here's something else that I gotta add this part to. Because so that you guys can understand. What it really is, where we're really at with this stuff in the center of the earth, what's going on here. This is another variable here. That in this polarity shift, where I was saying by Chan Thomas's hypothesis of that polarity of that magnetic field just really holding everything in its place here. And it mainly had to do with, because it starts at the core, it had to do with the stabilizing it there. And this is what they're seeing. It's actually spinning opposite of the planet's rotation now, which is, by theory, might slow it down. But for some reason, there's something else that's really determining it almost seemed like they would slow each other down by theory, but no, something else is going on here that's deeper on this polarity thing. Because polarity is how you get electric motors to spin and work, and how you have internal moving components like an armature is able to spin by using electricity and polarity. So somehow this thing going on with the polarity is having that effect on the core, and this liquid core is spinning now opposite of the planet. So you can imagine it's already generating pressure here during this. And then you could see, as far as the temperature table here, the thermo table, you could see how temperature is, where it's at white is its hottest. The outer core is yellow. And beyond that, it starts to turn orange and gradually turn a light red into a dark red. This is showing you that it gets cooler towards the outside. And there's a factor of what generates heat, and there's a pressure factor. When it came to, I was surprised by my small little theory that I learned in internal combustion engines, and about how pressure generates heat by itself. If you got super megatons of pressure suddenly, you're going to have some very intense heat just from the pressure. And so on my variable, I'm seeing that is really what determines a lot of this venting. because some of the brains on the big brains on it had some other kind of spaced out theory about it, and I didn't really. It's just a simple theory that explains it. Simple into the core. Like a lot of this is outer core material, and looks like some of it's even core material here. And so I'm saying that just only happens during this type of anomaly, this type of phenomena. That really gets down to where these gigantic things are blowing their caps. But I don't know all that history. I don't know all that history. But I know that there's somehow man's been affecting it on what he's been doing. And this is understood if you look at what the electromagnetic field frequencies have been. That's why they've have all this grounding and all these things or devices to try and get your polarity back in your body. Our bodies have lost their polarity. And this is understood to be coming from people that know this stuff, I learned. It's coming from the negative effects of industrialization over the past couple hundred years. So, so NASA has said that since 1831 it was stable until about then. So if you think about it, since 1831, because that's right about the time that Industrial Revolution was rolling. It was really rolling on the world. It was really starting to supply it. And it was already affecting things. As soon as we started building on that grid, off the paradigm, it started affecting it. And it's been kind of just doing this, kind of swaying around here. You know, it just kind of does this, trying to find itself. And so some of these are where your hot zones are around the world. With some of these volcanoes and your super volcanoes. Yeah. And so there you go. Just wanted to be able to throw that one in there so that you understand it's really what I'm saying. It's really this it's all connected. Oh, and I wanted to also respond to NASA's hypothesis on it affecting the temperature. That's another variable here. Thermal factor. Temperatures are been just weird all over the planet for the past 4 years. And there was a thing that happened where there was a cold, like, dome vortex. It's a hemisphere above, it was a cold hemisphere above the Arctic and Antarctic that stabilized it. Something happened back in 2000, end of 2018 or beginning of 2019, and that whole thing broke open and just spread all over the world. And ever since then, what it did was threw off the jet streams extremely. So then, in my hypothesis, he's saying here, Alan Buis is saying that there's no way that the polarity shift is going to have anything to do with temperature changes. But I don't know about that. He's saying it's because air is not ferrous. Ferrous, it means of iron origins. And it's not made up of iron, anything iron. So that's why they're saying it doesn't affect it, but I don't really think somehow it affects it, but not through the air. But it still affects it. If you think about it, the way that it works, the way it's always worked, the Earth doesn't spin. It doesn't topple over. It doesn't do this weird toppling over thing when it's going through the galaxy. It's not what it's doing. Somehow, if you spin a top on the table or a quarter, if you know how to do that, spin it like a top on the corner, you'll be able to see that the quarter will spin like this, right? And this is what the Earth is doing. You spin a top, you spin a quarter on the table. That's how it's spinning around the sun. And the polarity affects where that is placed, because it's somehow the other ones are spinning generally around the same area, right? And it's somehow related to the polarity of the sun, even in relation to that. So then this is why you have the change of temperature. It determines the temperature on the planet. How does polarity not affect the temperature on the planet if the coldest zones are the most extreme points of the polarity? Right? These have been the coldest areas on the planet, and generally your hottest areas are around this equator here. So it affects it? And if your polarity changes, it shifts your planet a little bit on its spin, you're going to have tremendous changes of climate around the whole world, of course. So the point was moot about it being feral. The air, what the air is doing is irrelevant. But the jet stream, I think what he's getting at is the jet stream. But the jet stream is very much determined on the stability, right? On a certain stabilities that we don't. Does static electricity affect air? Is air, well, it's in it. Does it affect things in it? In the air? Probably. You know, these are getting into some pretty deep things that, you know what I mean? But that was another, I just wanted to respond to that and then see what you all think. Be nice to get some of this stuff for some real thinkers out there. I'm sure you're out there. So please put your comments in. Stay tuned, and we'll keep going on this. Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.